Okay, while we have these projects over here curing, still got 2 weeks on some of those. I'm starting this project. I got this wood from Unique Wood Supply and Design. Check them out. Best prices around. This is African Sumac. Really cool wood, I think. This is the sapwood. This is the heartwood. It's actually usually very white. And you can see here in my wood chips while I was using the jigsaw. It's pretty white. But you put it out in the sun, all of a sudden it will turn red, which is cool. So we'll find a way to make sure it stays red. Just a very neat wood. It's got a lot of nodules on it and just cool things that poke out. A lot of cool grain. So the next step is going to be to seal it up. We're not going to do it quite like those. We're just going to do the clear coat seal. Put it in here. And then about 12 to 18 hours later, we're going to pour the first batch of epoxy and then fill to the top. But I'm actually going to do a green. So we're going to seal it up. And we don't want our dyes to really bleed into the wood and discolor our wood necessarily. So that's one reason for sealing it. And then the reason we're doing our first pour at 12 to 18 hours is we're waiting for this to get that tacky feeling, almost like bubble gum. And once it's to that point, you can still get that chemical bond with the next batch of epoxy. And about 24 hours later, thereabouts, we'll add the next layer. So this is almost 2 inches thick, so it's about 1 inch at a time, which means it's going to take a little bit longer to set up. So anyway, that is the plan. See you in the next video. Okay, so our first step is going to be to mix together some epoxy. It's about 81 degrees in the garage right now, fairly warm. I'm not going to mix a ton, but mix our part A first. It's a 2-to-1 ratio. Try to keep everything clean and tidy. All the way up until I can't. Pop some bubbles. I poured 150 milliliters, now I'm going to pour 75 more. Making a mess. Pretty normal. Alexa, set a timer for 5 minutes.
5 minutes, starting now.
This little bit, 5 minutes, you'll be mixed up pretty good. So So I've got my epoxy mixed. I use this brush to spread things out. Before I forget though, gonna pour my mold release, or spray it on my mold. Alexa, cancel. Okay, so I've I've laid down some plastic for my plastic, and we're gonna go ahead and just paint some on. This will give you a good idea what the wood's gonna look like. Once it's finished, it'll look really close to what we have here. So we've done our initial seal. Got everything just kind of sitting there for right now. Plenty of space on the outsides. There's a few spots just soaking up a lot, so might just hit those a little bit. Work it in. Sides are going to need as much as you can get on there. That is where all the bubbles are going to come from. I don't know if you could see that, but my paintbrush goes all the way in there. So you're trying to get all of that coated as well as you can. We'll do that a few more times until we're happy. So now we're gonna pop some of these bubbles that you can see. So you can see some right there. So, and once again, the reason we're putting epoxy in right here is when we mix our big batch epoxy, we're going to put a green translucent dye in there. You don't want that dye to penetrate the wood a lot. It can penetrate some, that's fine, because you want that bond. And we're going to get a mix between your normal bond with the wood and a chemical bond, and not just a sanded down bond, which isn't as strong. It's still strong, but not nearly as strong as it gripping and grabbing the wood. So anyway, so we're sealing it. We're going to fill it up one layer at a time. We're going to two bigger layers, about an inch at a time, and then we'll wait a couple of weeks and pull it out of the mold. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and install my blocks and make sure it doesn't move on us, because I like where it's at. And this is just Tyvek tape on a piece of pine, actually. Alright, so I have mixed up some epoxy, getting ready to do our first pour. Consistency I'm looking for on top is, can I touch my finger to it and does it stick to my glove? And we're right on the hairy edge of that. Just a little teeny bit sticks to my glove and it doesn't really want to come off, so I'd say we're pretty good. I've mixed up our part A for our first batch. Hopefully I've guessed appropriately. And I was contemplating two different colors. Let's see if you can see that well. So we have like a brighter green, and then we have like a deeper, darker forest green, and I think I'm gonna go with that. We're gonna mix some into here, and then, although our depth is pretty close to what we'll see in here, so maybe I don't actually need to do that. So I'm gonna set those aside. And then we'll take a pretty close count of how many drops or how many tablespoons that we actually pour in here. So yeah, and I'll mix that first, that way I don't have to necessarily worry about drying time. So we'll mix it into part A first and see how we like it. So we're probably going to do quite a bit, so 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So for 10 drops. I know I'm probably going to need more. I'll need more. Let's move this to where the camera can see it well. That's pretty good. So, it's very light right now, and I want it quite a bit darker than that, so. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So mix that in. One more thing. As the day progresses, I'm going to kind of splash this up here to make sure this gets a new layer of epoxy. We want to keep providing that chemical bond. By the time we add a new coat, it's going to be probably too hard to do that. I'm not going to worry about the top, because that's just going to do what it does. But this, we want to make sure we get the edges pretty good. I'm not worried about the inside of it, edges. I can't get there, for one, and for two, we're not going to have any epoxy really bonding there. So we might do this, a couple more times before it really starts to set up and get tacky. About 3-4 hours from now, we'll do it again. A lot of it's going to run off, but that's okay. We're just getting it wet again. Alright, so everything's set up the way we need it to. We're going to pour our last batch, which is going to be 96 inches. We're going to go (64) to 96. So half of 64 is going to be 32, and 32 plus 64 is 96. So part A to right here, part B to right there. Assuming we have that much left, which we should.